harness the lightning for hire. Man is the Lord of his spirit. It is amazing to be back once again with my main man. Talking about a great many of things. And, before we get into anything specific, we had a previous conversation talking about our rights. And a lot of people look at this in different ways. What may be important to somebody is completely different to somebody else.
Yeah.
With the aid of these, and again, this may sound wore out for anybody who's watched more than one of our videos, sacred plants, for example, what kava and kratom is, we have to stand up for what is right. Not only expanding our consciousness in a very healthy, mystical way. The kava experience that I had, that hit so hard that I wanted to mention this before really getting into anything deeper. And anybody who is even a cannabis user, we have to do our part. We have to stand up for this.
Yeah.
And this is what
freedom truly
is.
This is our birthright.
So we, we're going to continue, putting the word out there, whether not many people hear it or not. This is completely uncalled for, what is going on.
And this is the way religion was practiced the first million years.
And you know what? Having this, we have another video talking about kratom for religious sacraments. This, when you are in that realm, it's so spiritual.
It is.
It is. You're being moved by something way larger than what meets, our eyes here.
Yeah.
For the people who use kratom and use kava, they understand. And
maybe they don't though.
They may not. I would find it very very hard for me to see that side of it. Now, right. I wanted to mention, and if anybody who consumes alcohol, then
fuck you, man.
Yeah, fuck you. No, seriously, we definitely don't recommend it nor partake in it.
We are not alcohol drinkers. I've experienced it, and I will never drink again. I haven't had a sip of alcohol in probably over a year.
So the truth is, we've done a certain amount of research on a lot of these reasons for trying to ban this sacred plant, and we've come to a couple of different points. One is which it could possibly and is hurting the pharmaceutical companies.
Yes.
And a lot of these alcohol companies are
That's a big
scared.
One. As far as some of the things that I've read, coming out of the AKA, the American Kratom Association, it seems to be a lot of alcohol companies that are really pushing to ban it because, this is a lot of people out there, who aren't, on a quest for consciousness expansion. A lot of people use it simply for its relaxing properties, and it's safe, and it's not toxic, and so it could be a good alternative to something like alcohol. And so these alcohol companies are desperately paying politicians off.
This is true insanity, and this should not be happening. There is not a fragment of proof of why this is a sensible strategy. Look, I want to put the point across, we both do, to anybody who watches this. No politicians, nobody with these, alcoholic products that they're selling, they don't want you to find the truth. And these plants could be a very amazing,
very important tool.
gateway to find the truth.
Totally.
And we're going to get into some of these truths, here in a little bit, we both have some even recent experiences that's great to bring to the table.
Yeah.
But we wanted to start off talking about the garbage that's going on. The absolute, there's no word.
The corruption.
But anyway, so with that being said, we're going to continue to to use these plants and
the government, hopefully the feds don't raise my house in the future, but the government policies has never affected my pharmacological use.
No.
And it never will.
And it never will. You know what? That's
a freedom that I in our Constitution that was, I'm pretty sure, written on hemp paper.
It was.
It talks about the pursuit of happiness. And if we don't have the right to use a plant that's working with us very well, then it's obviously drivel. We're a corrupted society.
We would like to, as arrogant as this sounds, we're going to present the truth. First of all, that's a huge misconception. We are not presenting anything. You can call us crazy or whatever. It's the plant that's presenting these things to us. We're literally just talking about what we feel, and we're just going to say what's being told by the plants.
I do want to say this, because there are people out there that have extremely addictive personalities, and there's people that say, I had to quit kratom. It was negatively impacting my life. If that's the case,
it's off the sauce.
Yeah, exactly. I am.
You can reduce
I am in, I think, about year 4 or 5 in my kratom use journey. It's not like I'm in the honeymoon phase at all. I'm way past that, and it still works wonderful for me, and I try to keep my dose at a reasonable level, and it works very well for me. But we're not, there are, like I said, there are people out there that have really addictive personalities. The same people that have problems with kratom are the same people that get addicted to pornography and other things.
I feel that a big reason for these, why is pornography, alcohol as big as what it is? People in general are unhappy with the way things are set up. They're seeking some type of escape to get out of this really crazy situation that we are in. And the truth is, and it could possibly burst a lot of people's bubbles, what we see is an illusion. It is fake. That probably does sound completely insane.
In Buddhism they call it the Maya, the illusion. Excuse me. I've talked about this before, and it's very important. People confuse what they sense with reality. You see, and it's a very well-known fact that by simply observing the way our brains work, we can only perceive a very small slice of the the possible perceptions, and what we do see, and what the senses that we do have is it's what evolution over a long period of time has constructed and built up so that we can survive. The senses that we have are they facilitate our survival. But the thing is, there's a whole other host of experiences that these plants lend, and it can break down your conception of what you think reality is.
That's so true, man. I would like to point out some of the most simplest of situations that can happen when using this plant, plants, and I do mean kratom and kava. My last kava experience, I'm even having this to a certain degree now, the empathy. I probably overused this word a lot. You actually not only see the corruption and what true evil is, which I would love for us
We'll
to
get
cover
around
that.
to that.
There's a lot of misconceptions on what true evil really is, and it's probably not what you're expecting. Look, we decided to start recording these conversations
That we've had for years.
we've been having for a long time. I want to clarify something. I do feel that I'm much. I don't want to say behind, but I'm still seeing some of the things that this gentleman has seen. As he mentioned, he's been doing.
Been experimenting with
He's
psychoactive
a
plants
great
for
many
a
of
while.
things, such as psychedelics, kratom, cannabis, for many, many years, especially cannabis, as probably as long as, wow, I mean, 11, 12 years.
Probably.
For a very long time now.
Not heavy use through all that time, but I've used it consistently.
You know,
for good
oh,
10
for
years or
sure.
something.
That's what I was thinking. Now I want to point out that I've done kratom a little bit over a year, and kava, obviously, we came to that a little bit later.
Now, cannabis doesn't seem to I mean, maybe it will eventually, but it doesn't seem to work as well with you
Absolutely.
as things like mitragina does.
You know, the truth is, I can get the best of both worlds with kratom and kava.
Totally.
I get a cannabis.
As a true stoner, I realize
yeah.
the potential that they have. You know.
Now it could be, and we've discussed this before. It's interesting for anybody who maybe tried cannabis after kratom. It's as if I really feel that I would have a different view if I was a true cannabis smoker before going to kratom, like you.
Yeah, totally. I was a stoner before I ever tried kava or kratom.
You know, we have a video, one about kratom, one about kava.
Well, we called it that. We touched on it, but we also
rambled a lot. Yeah. As he mentioned before, we take these plants before we have these talks. We're on both plants as we speak, and we feel amazing.
Absolutely.
We feel empathy. Do we look high? We are more than functional.
Yeah.
And that's why look, if I sound or look crazy and uncomfortable to look at, I'm very sorry. I really am telling you the truth, and whatever we've been told.
We don't have some kind of motive for this other than, you know, we're very disturbed that there's bans on this.
We are not making a penny, obviously,
off any of these
doing these videos.
If you look at our views, it's, you know,
that's
30s.
Pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah.
We are doing this for the 30 people that may look at this and may look at things a bit differently. So, you know, I've mentioned plenty of times before, we are brothers. You know, we've been close a lot.
It's strange. I mean, we're best friends, and it just so happens that
we're
brothers.
And I just want to point this out, guys. You know, I was not doing anything for a great many of years.
Yeah. I mean, I was trying to get him on to cannabis and kratom.
I was really interested in these revelations that he was having.
Because I would talk to you, I'd rant to you, man, about this stuff, about these experiences that I was having on this.
And now that I look back, I, you know, truly see there's really no way of really putting these in the words that you can without being there. Sometimes I'll have so much euphoria and empathy. I'll just look over and I'm like, dude, you know what I'm like? And he'll be like, give me a certain look. You know, like, I know exactly what you're going through. But to kind of wrap up what I was wanting to say about these politicians trying to take this away, the only way I know how to put it, it's a beyond disgrace. It's a absolute disgrace.
It's a intense abuse of human rights.
It comes back down to the money. You know, these alcohol companies paying them to getting them in office to do these things. We're outnumbered.
We are totally
for sure. That's what it comes down to.
And this is a big reason. And like I said, you know, I think everyone should have autonomy over their own bodies. And if you
be back in a second,
of course, and if you want to to use a toxic substance, that's totally up to you. You know, I mean, I wouldn't want, you know, someone to use meth or even alcohol, you know, because they can be problematic. But there, you know, the government should have no say in that, and how you um, run your own chemical system. Um, and it's a shame um, what is going on, and the corruption and the misinformation that's being spread about this plant. You know, what we're saying is don't ban it, regulate it. You know, make sure that things are tested, and make sure, you know, regulate it, but do not ban it, because this helps too many people, religiously and physically.
Yeah, man. You know, I want to point a kind of before and after kratom and kava use. I feel looking back, I was a very selfish person in
You've
a lot of
become
ways.
way. I've seen this.
I mean,
You know,
he's a witness. We've always been so close.
You've become way more health conscious.
Health conscious. You know, I really feel that just a few years ago, I just I didn't really have any, I hate to say it this way, motive to live. You know, I was just gobbling down Big Macs and Dave's triples and just drinking one soda pop after another. Look, I'm not a extreme exercise man by any means, but
we exercise our imaginations.
We exercise our imaginations for sure, which is very important. But I'm definitely tend to at least a few days a week. I'll take a really nice walk through the woods. We walk together
that
a
is
lot.
One of the greatest medicines. Oh my God, just spending some time in nature, man.
So to make this a long story short, as we never do, at least I never do. This is a pack of lies. Don't believe any of it. That's Blair Witch Project quote. But you know, we obviously don't want to spend the whole video talking about our hatred toward these politicians making
towards the
these,
establishment.
We just want to make clear that it's, and look, you know, a lot of things that we say, we want you to research.
Exactly.
As Crawley said, this is a great quote to always. He doesn't want everybody to blindly accept his doctrine, so to speak. He wants every man to chop his own way through the jungle. That was his quote. That's
beautiful.
That's we you know, learn from our experiences, from the ones that we're very close to. But you know, we'd like to start getting into some of these really mystical situations that's been happening. And I promise you, if you open your mind and your heart to go down that road of learning, whether from plants, you know, reading, you will. I promise you. You will learn, and you will be sucked in, and you will be there.
Once you find, you know, as McKenna called it, the ultimate tool for transcendence. You know, you might do some, and I have tremendous amount of respect for things like yoga and meditation, and they do allow you to tap into these really deep states of consciousness. But you know, you're kind of looking for the pedal. You know, when you go into some of these practices, when you start to use these plants, the brakes become also important, because there's no limit to what you can.
Who sniffed the line, brother?
Yeah.
So one thing I feel would be good to kind of start off with on this subject is, and I really know that it's best to do this at a little bit of a younger age.
Mm-hmm. The younger, the better.
You know, you start realizing, for example, okay, this body and this flesh, this situation that we're in. First of all, it's a very, very weird place.
Very temporary.
That was my next word. It will show us that this is very temporary. Therefore, we are forced to, whenever possible, maybe multiple times throughout the day, start really looking at what the afterlife is. A lot of people want a set in stone truth,
Yeah.
which isn't the case.
No, it's not.
But there's enough
There's
there.
glimpses and there's insights and feelings. You know, this is the thing. Um, we live in a society where, you know, we live in a society of lawyers and law and proving, you know, and I'm not saying that's not important, but we've lost touch with
Completely.
feeling,
Yeah.
you know, with feeling and intuition, you know, and if you, you know, can dissolve, you know, your cultural tendencies and really start to explore life in this unfiltered way, you know, everything in nature is just mind blowing.
Yeah, man. You know, we've talked about this before. We talked about it at the beginning of this video, but we would like to ask anybody who watches this later, what do you feel that true evil is? And this is something that I was thinking about on my last Kava freedom ceremony, and we talked about it for a little bit. I figured it would, you know, we figured it would be good to touch on this. You know, well, let's look at, you know,
There's many different models for this, and we can explore them.
Well, as we started out this video talking about what these politicians are trying to do, that is an example of true
We
evil.
have all of this data. We have all of this data, thousands of years of data, hundreds of years of data, you know, and recent data that shows how much. Get down, Cammy.
She always wants to be in the video.
I know. How much people are benefiting from these plants, and yet they're being prohibited. That is evil.
Yeah.
You know, not only are people, you know, getting a relief from some of these things, you know, with psychedelics, there's a great amount of research with depression and PTSD, and you know, we stand out fucking kids to war, and they see stuff so traumatizing.
It's
like you know, PTSD. That's basically where a memory gets burned in your brain, and you can't forget it.
Yeah,
I mean, we
man.
don't even realize what that would be like. And there's things out here like mushrooms, you know, and even MDMA that seem to really help with this. And it's still a scheduled drug. That is evil.
You know, another example of what true evil is, we've touched on this part, what I'm getting ready to say, but, you know, not only how we treat other people, and there's a way to present yourself. You can be this really miserable person who lashes out at everybody,
complains constantly.
Look, yes, we understand, you know, we're in a very fucked up situation.
We are.
But that's not an excuse to behave the way you just see so much of it.
No.
This is not.
You're just creating more of it.
It's making it worse.
Making it worse.
Now, not just humans, obviously, but any living consciousness, whether it's an insect, you know, I'm not saying if, you know, you get bit by a brown recluse in the middle of the night, there's nothing, you know, wrong with killing that, obviously. Right. We don't, though. We don't kill an insect, you know. And I know it goes back to this, you know, late 60s hippie way of looking at things. First of all, those guys were on some great things.
You know, we should be compassionate towards anything that has a consciousness.
It's, you know,
I would say that this earth is a single organism, really.
We took a walk the other day, and, you know, he was pointing out all the locusts that were flying back and forth, and he said, look, they are seeing the world in their eyes.
Yep.
As Alan once said, he said, you know, he had a picture of a ladybug. And he said, I'm convinced that this ladybug is thinking that the world is centered around it.
Exactly. It is. Everything in this whole universe, it's the center of its own universe.
There's been so many misconceptions over the years that's just changed the course of the way we all look at things.
I think Christianity too, the widespread acceptance of it I mean, Christianity teaches like man is
Yeah.
separate, from the rest of the world, and I think that's a really bad situation because, we've separated ourselves from the natural process that we were going towards. It's like literally like this 2,000 years or so has just been a waste. Basically, we haven't
just,
integrated ourselves back into the natural plan of whatever this is.
this, not only John Lennon was all about this. What's the point in these wars?
Yeah.
The Vietnam War. But I think this could be a reason why Salvador Dali was close to them. He didn't understand what is this about. What are we doing?
Right.
And Dali, he obviously somebody we really look up to. There's been so many people that hasn't been talked about, and a lot of these people were looked at as we mentioned before, evil people, and these people, they were for freeing themselves, or at least to an extent to this. Oh my God,
I mean,
it's weird.
People like Dolly. I mean, he was obviously. I mean, he talked about experimenting with mescaline and hashish. I mean, and through his art, I mean, obviously, I mean, that is, he was getting a drip from hyperspace.
I've learned from just decently high doses of cannabis that you may, let's just use, I want to sound really cool, and just say I'm a psychedelic person.
Yeah.
Look, I am open about this. Yes, I do consider myself a psychedelic person, but I haven't done actual true psychedelics such as psilocybin. I've learned a lot about, the plant, fungus, or whatever you want to call it,
fungus.
From the stories and the experiences that he had from reading from, Timothy Leary, and even kind of got close to that radar by kava and kratom and cannabis. But until you actually get to these places, you learn really fast. A really funny thing that happened was, I've smoked at this point a couple years ago, about a year and a half ago, a little bit of cannabis. He would always, be like, hey, take a couple of hits of this, but never got truly out there. And I remember having a horrible, disgraceful alcohol experience.
Yeah.
And I told him the next time I come up, I said, I'm not doing alcohol ever again.
Yeah.
And I said, brother, I'm like you, man. I'm a cannabis man.
What'd I say?
And he said, we'll see what a big cannabis man wants. He gave me these edibles.
Dispensary edibles.
He said, we'll see what a big cannabis man you are here in about 45 minutes. And good Lord above, he was right.
Oh man! After I had given him a little more, I gave you like 15.
Oh, I might have messed up a little bit.
Yeah, I was so upset, man, because
you wanted me to have.
I wanted you to have a good experience, and that.
I
honestly,
did,
it was kind of.
Yeah, it was kind of good.
It was a difficult experience, but
very difficult.
Like I like to say there is no bad trips, only difficult experiences. These are all things that you can integrate, and sometimes we need to be broken down. We do.
I know I've mentioned this in other videos, but when we're on the subject, it always makes me go back to it. I've learned things from that experience and made changes.
Yeah.
And it's funny, something so demonized, like, plays with your conscience. Like, it makes you want to, treat people better.
Yeah, that's one of the things about, cannabis, for example. You feel really shitty. If you get stoned and maybe you treated someone bad, or you
will think about that.
You will definitely think about that, and it feels terrible. It feels so bad. It feels like shit when you treat people bad, and people don't feel that. That are not, using these plants.
Like in my marriage, for example, I was like, maybe I shouldn't have worded this in this way. Maybe I should do more of this, do more of that. A big list of things, and I was like, wow, I'm going to start slowly, marking these things off of what
Yeah.
I'm putting into our physical life.
Yeah.
Just because it's so limited doesn't mean we can just do whatever we want to while we're here.
If we want the world to change, we must take control over our own lives. We are the unit. We are the unit that makes up the world,
Yeah.
the individual. So we got to take care of ourselves, and we need to resolve, our karma or whatever, we are working through. All these complexes that we have, we need to simplify ourselves, and then we can move on and escape the matrix, if you will.
We could actually make 200 videos about breaking down some of the very different and complex things that could happen when taking these plants. So we just throw in maybe a recent experience here and there, and like an older experience. But it's not just one certain, at least especially with kava, it could really hit one way today and completely different tomorrow.
Totally.
Which he's mixing some up. We're about to take another shell here in a second.
But I wanted to say this, unless you had something that you really
Nope.
need to say.
You go ahead, and I'm going to be right back in a second, brother.
We were talking about evil and real evil, and I think a really bad misconception, is that, your bodily needs are evil. They're of the devil. While our government is evaporating, people for money. That's the real evil. We like to have this mindset, or a lot of people like to think, that the United States is the good guy, and we only go to war when we need to. There's a lot of evil things that is going on in our government. And no, our bodies are not evil. Sex is not evil. All these things that have been demonized is it's an inversion of value. I think we should be in tune with our bodies, and I think that's that's a really pagan thing. It really is.
Being in tune
with your body,
with our bodies, and being in tune with nature.
Exactly.
I can't remember. I can never pronounce these philosophers' names because I'm an idiot. But I want to say there's like Peru or something. I really don't know. But one of the first things he did was he traveled to India. He wanted to know more about this. He said there's something more than this Western culture, weird, unnatural thing going on here. Oh, he picked up a lot of things from over there. Them guys, I can't remember who says it. Maybe McKenna. He found out the truth, and it was believed because of that.
Oh, yeah. I want to say this quote here. I think it's William Blake, the mystic poet. He said, if the truth can be said, it will be believed.
Yeah.
Because the truth resonates with the soul.
Going back to kava just for a second, we may have said this before. If not, we meant to. We do want to point out, and if I say this a little bit wrong, he's done a little more research on kava than I have. But kava is not addictive, at least.
It is not physically addictive.
Now, how strange. This is the truth. Kava should be in the place, culture-wise, is what alcohol is.
Totally.
It's so, oh my God.
It's mind-blowing.
It's insane. It's so mind-blowing. Kava should be in the place where alcohol is.
It's like people are settling for a shit sandwich, when they can have a nice dinner.
It's so true, man. A purification ceremony.
Yeah.
By the way, we have to say this at least one time in one of our videos. A purification ceremony is a peanut butter and honey sandwich.
It is.
Yeah, we really feel that that honey is definitely a purification.
Totally.
It's
I
it's
love
beautiful.
honey, man. Local honey is so fantastic.
Now, we need to. Our mom actually talked about this whenever we was really young, just in a different way. But after a conversation we had, I feel like it's really beneficial to say this. We need to, as much as possible, read very resourceful books because we don't know how long they're going to be here.
Yeah, we gotta hide the truth in our hearts.
We have to hide the truth in our hearts. There's beautiful poetry that I've learned over the years. I have another video of laughing while I'm trying to tell it, but it's all in good time though. We need to be. What if, amazing people such as Terrence McKenna get banned?
Right.
What if these politicians are, people's getting too into this freedom, psychedelic, whatever it is. This could happen. If they could take away kratom, they can take away anything else.
Totally.
This is serious.
Yeah. We need to be doing all we can to empower ourselves through arming ourselves with information, and instead of absorbing your information through the filter of your culture, we need to remove that filter, and I think these plants are a great way to remove that filter. We got to dissolve those boundaries and really start to view reality in this, one-on-one way. And yeah, you're so right, man. It's really scary. I mean, we don't know. We have no idea what will come down the tubes in the future. I mean, with the proliferation of artificial intelligence and God only knows how our government and foreign governments will be using this type of technology. I don't have much faith that these leaders will use this very powerful technology wisely, and that's very scary. So, the consciousness of each and every one of us is so important, and we can't just not do anything about this. We must represent something better than what our culture represents.
I love something you said, man. These politicians, these people who are disillusioned that they have this power, we assure you, oh, good God, we assure you with the truth. That's just, I don't care how arrogant that sounds. They don't care anything about you.
No.
I don't care what side it's on.
I don't either.
And you know what? There's no such thing as a true politician. They're getting paid. How do you think they make their money?
Yeah.
If they are billionaires and they only get paid $400,000 a year for taking the seat of being the president, then where the fucking hell does the rest of it come from?
Yeah.
That's all the proof you need. You know what? This is one of the first things that you really look into when taking these plants. We've decided a long time ago to go the opposite direction of what is our culture, what is the so-called authority. We've said this before, and look, I send as much, we both do, happiness and temporary peace, that this amazing woman, I would love to go up to her and be like, I respect you beyond words. Choosing kratom other than this toxic bullshit, and she's locked up for 10 fucking years. I had a kratom ceremony.
It's a Schedule 1 drug in Alabama.
Of literally,
it's in the same. It's in the same category.
Fuck that,
dude. Meth is Schedule 2.
Fuck that.
Think about that. So they're saying that kratom has 0 medical properties. That is so false.
We know why, brother.
We do know why.
We know
it's
that it's
consciousness controlling thing.
Absolutely. It's I'm sorry. I know that I'm rambling a lot about this. Um, but I'm deeply, 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 deeply disturbed about that. I'm sorry, I'm kind of out there in Kava right now. Yes, talking. This is an interesting point. We really are cannot talk. Talking from our heart, which he said there's what is it with the heart? Something about.
Oh yeah,
this is good.
There's neurons in our heart. Neurons. The brain. The brain has neurons, and so does our heart. So it does seem like our heart does a bit of thinking, of some sort.
It does.
Which is mind blowing.
You know what? As mind blowing as it is, it does make sense though.
It does.
Now, we're touching on some things that we both we took a walk and had a conversation about some of the things we'd like to talk about. By the way, when I went to the bathroom, if we get up frequently and go to the bathroom a lot, kava definitely makes you go to the bathroom.
It's a diuretic, so it makes you have to use the restroom quite frequently.
So stay hydrated with water.
Very important. If you take kava, especially if you take it frequently, stay motherfucking hydrated because it is important.
We are taught from a very young age who are the bad people, the good people. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's natural to be a kid and think, policeman,
right?
He's going to keep us all safe.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody. The funny thing is, if you are a police officer and watching this, I just want you to know, man, I don't have any respect for you. No, truthfully, what you're doing is wrong. I'm sorry, it really is.
I really do think that people would have a lot more respect for police officers.
Look,
if our drug laws were different.
If you are a police officer and you arrested somebody for the possession
of some plant matter,
of a holy, sacred plant such as kratom, you are wrong, and fuck you.
Hey, they're just following orders, man.
Yeah, this. All jokes aside, look. We really do believe in making peace with anybody we come in contact with. That goes back to having that conscience. I mean, kava would be look, shouldn't have behaved in a certain way in this circumstance. It's very hard to be in flow. Actually, I take that back. We shouldn't be in flow with what the law is.
No.
What is right and wrong. This is so big. And I want to say this, it's just also mind-blowing because, we've experienced both. With alcohol, very little. We'll probably never drink alcohol again, though.
No. It's just, I don't want to support that.
No.
If these alcohol companies are trying to prohibit, mitragina and just for the fact that it's taken from themselves. Fuck you. Why would I want to support you for it? I will not support you. No.
This is something to really consider. It's such easy access to go in to anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, I get so inspired by something you said, man. Great many a moons ago. We was having this conversation just like this. We was both feeling such euphoria, empathy, as it always delivers. He leans up to me and says, I'm so happy we're getting these effects on a plant, a sacred plant. So many people are satisfied with the Walmart drug.
Yeah.
The Walmart
drug.
The Walgreens, the dollar store, whatever it is, that's... another thing that I've learned from these plants is I've became, even though this may be very vague, and I'll explain, so organic.
Yeah.
I've gotten so interested in all of these plants, even coming in contact with mushrooms that are not magic mushrooms. You see these things in a much different way.
Yeah, you do, man.
Of how
more
beautiful
intimate
nature is, for example.
Totally. People they'll look at a tree, they'll realize oh my God, this is an organism that's way older than I am. you know, and it has roots just way far underground, and it's this beautiful, majestic thing. I heard somebody say this. He said, you know, people look at trees and they just see it as a pre-table.
Yes.
You know, but they don't see it as this majestic, beautiful thing. You know, this organism.
There's this song that I love so much. I can't remember the name of it, but it's a line in it is, "Are there secrets in the woods? Would the river really tell if it could?" You know, that got me thinking about that. There's so much, you know, if these trees could, you know, talk in the way we could, I could only imagine like the different things that it could tell you, because you see all of these we'll call them old timers, I don't that practice ceremonial magic, these druids, they wasn't out on the boring concrete streets and flooded, you know, with mass population,
capitalistic propaganda. And
yeah, we want to talk about a couple things really quick. You know, one of these things, you know, going back to the lies, you know, these huge cities that everybody, a lot of people are so into. This
it's a virtual reality.
I take a vacation, you know, go there. When you look at that from the outside, you know, while you're sitting in nature, it's, oh God, it's breathtaking.
Just you know, the amount of pollution that's being pumped out in cities on a day-to-day basis is unbelievable. You know, I mean, I was listening to someone talk about the Hudson River.
I can't believe we've talked for 46 minutes.
Okay, this is a property of Kava. Kava makes time go by.
There's no way.
So fast. And I've noticed this about cannabis. Cannabis seems to make time go by a lot slower. You know, some of these plants have a type of time dilation, but yeah, I was listening to someone talk about the Hudson River and just how, you know, never fucking swim in that river, you know. There's fucking sewage and all kinds of garbage in it, like, and it's just so crazy that we just accept it, you know, like, we just accept that a whole body of water is completely unusable, you know. But the thing is, I would imagine that the Hudson River probably flows into other bodies of water, and it's just so contaminated, you know. We've contaminated this planet so much, and it's so sad, you know. You know, when you go in, you know, people go into space. You know, William Shatner, he went into space a couple years ago or something, and he came back. You know, he had a mystical experience. He
was in tears.
Yes, he went up there and he saw nothing but death.
Yeah, that's
for infinite.
I thought that was an interesting way to explain that.
Yes,
I can see where he's coming
death,
from.
and then you look down. There's this beautiful pearl, full of life, and here we are just toxifying it every day. It's so sad, you know. And I think this pagan consciousness is something that we need more prevalent in our society. You know, a more earth conscious, body conscious way of living. You know, I mean, plants have been playing this game for forever. You know, plants, you know, they've been running the world forever, and you know, we need to integrate ourselves back into nature, because I think we'll have more direction, you know. I think it's very possible that that, you know, there's something that needs to happen. Like there's I really do think it's possible that there's a point to all of this, you know. That you know, McKenna talked about the eschaton, you know, the study of the eschaton, eschatology. It's the study of last things. And McKenna talked about the eschaton as this thing, we don't know what it is quite, in the future, and we're not quite going, you know, from the past to the future, but we are, but it's being pulled like a magnet by the eschaton, this thing that needs to happen, and nature will organize itself to facilitate this plan of some sort. You know, maybe it's this, what people call, you know, the singularity, or you know, what's really interesting about or the time we're living in, things are becoming more and more interconnected. Everything is becoming it. I mean, it's always been interconnected, but what I mean is like,
everything leads into each other.
Yes.
No matter what it is, the old saying, like, it's a small world.
Yeah.
Like, that actually applies so much now. The term we've talked about, synchronicity, as Carl Jung talked about, has been happening to both of us so much. Whether it's numbers, if we think of, just say, I thought of some guy that I went to high school with. I haven't thought about him in almost 9 years. Oh, I run into him at the grocery store the next day. Me and him we've been on a rather strange journey. Especially this past year. We share so many similarities, so much of the exact same situations. It's gotten to the point to where I have a feeling he's going to tell me about something, and then it turns out he does, and then I have something that's almost identical. For example, the past 3 days, I have been dealing with very strange dreams, obviously, that could or is partially due to kava and kratom, I believe.
Oh my God, the lucid dreaming from kava is so unbelievable.
It's to the point to where you actually believe that's the reality.
Oh my gosh. I literally just last night I had a dream that was very profound. Like, I woke up really shook up. It was my mind is directed towards the mystical. It's directed towards the mysteries of life and death. And so I guess it would make sense that my dreams would explore those things, and they do. Yeah. My dreams explore like the things that I'm interested in here, which is really, really insane.
Yeah, one thing is we've been hit really hard with the revelations of death.
Yeah.
We've thought a lot, deeply. There's a certain type of night when these things are definitely
more real and more able to be perceived. Like,
we have so many distractions, it's easy to really lose focus.
That's a big part of it too. And I also think that, in witchcraft, witches usually do their work at night, because there's less psychic activity, less disturbances. Yeah. And not only that, but there's a state of mind, perhaps it's related to that lack of psychic activity, but there's a really strange state of consciousness that I find myself in, and I hear other people say the same that are on this path. When you think about death, for example, in that time of night, it's because it just seems like when we talk about death, in the daytime, it's just like, oh yeah, everybody's gonna die. We all know that.
It's not as real.
But at 3 a.m, you're like, oh my God. Hard. It's almost like you're dead then. You know what I'm saying? Like,
it hits hard.
It hits
you.
Oh
yeah.
And it's a little scary. But it's something we gotta come to terms with in a very real way. And we need to come to terms with, what is the best way to live our lives? Whatever.
Can I add something to what you just said by any chance? This is really important. He's touching on something that it's unreal how it's a mirror held up to me going through the same thing. There's 2 things that are very important. Not only, we should really be mindful of how we conduct our day-to-day lives here, how we treat all consciousness, but the things that we learn, the things that we take to our grave, this is our philosophy on this. That's literally carry that over and have that momentum.
Mm-hmm.
He's learned from psilocybin experiences that a world infinite, made out of mind with, oh God, scenarios that unless you were in these realms, you couldn't understand. So that's why, I'm not even the best person to explain this, even though I've read a lot about it and listened to one-on-one accounts.
Yeah.
But this shows us, we know for a fact, there's no way. I mean, this is part of the great work.
It is.
Let's figure out a lot of mysticism points to
look
figuring out what death is.
Like one of the greatest ancient civilizations, Egypt.
Mhm.
They spent a lot of time talking about death and
It's
talking
something
about how
our
to
culture doesn't do.
No.
We have so much to make us run from
We
it.
were a materialistic culture, and
Yeah.
then inherently in that way of thinking, things, I want things. I need property so I can, sustain
I
myself.
promise you these plants.
You
Once again,
evaporate
they're trying to look. Oh, I want to say a good point. Say these garbage bags take our plants away in the state that we live in. They can never take away the
Yes.
insight and what
Exactly.
we've learned from that. We learned the lies that they're spewing out. They can
Yep.
never take that away.
Nope.
That's going to be carried over. So, we already won in that aspect.
Exactly.
We already won in that aspect, and we know that there's other very
I'm
holy
so
plants.
grateful. I really am so grateful for, the experiences that a lot of these plants have given me. I mean, it's shaped my consciousness, and whether
sure.
I'm on them or not, it shapes your consciousness.
You still. I mean, there's times like, obviously we're not even on, Kratom or Kava. You thinking about that experience.
Exactly.
It carries over. You think about it a lot throughout the days. Certain cannabis experiences.
Yeah.
But going back to what I was saying, what was I saying? I was going to say something I feel very important.
Death.
It was about death. Man, we do this sometimes. This is classic.
You have so many things to say at once.
It is.
I know.
What was I going to say? I know it was okay. I wanted to add something to you said.
I was saying,
crap. If I could rewind this video, I would remember.
I know. What was I saying last?
Yeah, I swear it was important. It really was.
I was talking about death and how our culture is a materialist culture, and in that inherently, there's this grasping for things, and things are obviously inherently temporary, and as eventually.
I think I know what I was going
to
remember.
About the Egyptians.
Yeah.
And their study of death.
It could be more big than it's ever been before on the idea that we're more attached to our bodies than ever before.
Which is a bad time considering that our planet is becoming increasingly toxic. I mean, the air that we breathe is probably going to give us cancer at some point.
You have the guy who's, and by the way, it's amazing to take care of your body, but you have the guy who's constantly on his phone, taking pictures in the mirror of his six-pack, muscles. You have the woman who's taking pictures of her titties and her butt.
You should take care of your body because it's your temple. But this, people do it in this way in which, they're trying to impress people.
Which, again, we said early on in this video, this is, could be sad to look at it in this way. All of these things not only are distractions.
It's like your body is all, ripped and stuff, but at the same time, our planet is becoming just absolutely toxified.
It's becoming toxic.
We need to take care of this. We're robbing the future of our children.
Yeah, we live in this place where it's fucking selfish.
Yeah.
It's benefit me now. I mean, look, Donald Trump, for example. I don't even like mentioning that horrible name on our videos.
I know.
But that's just an example. Ram Dass talks about him as well, very negatively.
In the 90s.
He is somebody, look, he is like almost 80 years old. He's not worried about, look, me and him to an extent are like the classic tree hugger type people.
Yeah.
We really are. And we look at trees. I tell this to my wife all the time. I was like, that tree's a person too. I always have this joke I tell her. I was like,
you say person
yeah,
just so they can
understand
that that's like you. It's another organism.
I threw her mind for a loop, like a week ago or something like that. I said, you're looking around all these trees. I said, now as soon as the animal species of humans leave,
yeah.
I said, what they do is that they get back together with their spouses and have sex, and they have time. It's like, just looked at me in the most classic. That might as well be as true as the stuff we're being fed.
Exactly.
They are a consciousness, though, at the end of the day. And look, we're talking about, these plants make us look at death. Sometimes it can be scary.
Totally.
Especially kava. It can really be right in your face.
When I'm on, Mitragynia speciosa, and I think about death, I almost think about it in a more accepting way.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be scary.
Yes.
But
yes.
A lot
especially
of times
with that. Yeah.
with kratom, it can be like a more of an accepting feeling. Whereas with kava,
so true.
With kava and cannabis, it can be a little more can kind of shake you up a little bit.
Literally, man. Like we'll be conducting a kratom ceremony, and I'll just look over and I'll be like, dude, I don't care if I die in 5 minutes from now. I don't give a fuck what the future brings. You're so you can accept these. Look, we are living in a rotting graveyard in this 3D world, in this physical world. This is not where we can have our treasures.
This is not your home, as the Christians would say.
There's a certain feeling, though, of touching base with our actual home.
Yeah.
When we're on these planets.
Somewhere off in hyperspace.
It's, we had a conversation earlier. We mentioned it briefly earlier, but when you truly set out to seek this great work, so many different forms.
The magnum opus.
Oh, yeah, I love that, man. When what's synchronicity? Heard that word today.
Really?
From a gentleman who was talking about the one album by Acid Bath, the one with the clown on it.
Yeah,
they said that's their magnum opus. And I was like, whoa, I don't hear that term very much, but
they're great work.
But yeah, so what was I saying? Okay, I remember.
Okay.
As we seek out this very important work, sometimes it may seem you're not getting the type of results that you want. Yeah. But when you least expect them, you will be bombarded with so many different things, and you may not be ready for it.
Ego is the impediment of Tao. You know what I'm saying? McKenna has this story about going to the Amazon rainforest, and he would go take a walk by himself, and there was all kinds of butterflies, and he would reach out his arm, and butterflies, all kinds of them, would come and dance on his arm and just do extraordinary things, and he would cry. It was just so beautiful. And then he said he would get a group of his friends, who weren't there for that experience, and they would take a walk with him, and he would reach out his arm, nothing happened. Then he said, come, to kind of invite them, nothing happened, because his ego was involved, you see. And it really does seem like that. Nature will reveal secrets when you don't have that ego. It's really true, I'm telling you.
A lot of people would be looking at that. Well, that's convenient. It happens when nobody's around. That's why that ego comes in the first place. Mm-hmm. Because we know if we was to tell the situation that happened, well, most likely nobody would believe.
Exactly.
But it's those experiences that...
It's almost as if reality has built into it. Like, it's trying to maximize our asleepness, It's almost like you have to get into this state of egolessness in order to really have those types of experiences. Because there is for sure a lot of fucking people that get into spirituality for as a tail feather, you know, as a
Oh
as
yes,
a
yeah.
tail feather, like look at me, I'm all
Oh
spiritual,
my
you
God, it's the
know, and
same thing. I know. I've known a lot of people from the past were huge on preaching about if you don't meditate, if you don't
yes,
meditate,
exactly,
then you don't know what's going on.
right,
And initially, that just kind of turned me
yeah,
against this whole practice altogether. And I've learned, you know, over especially the past like 2 or 3 months, though, I have like a kind of a unique form of that.
mhm.
We all, have to find, what really clicks for us. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
it's
true.
it's we're all the same, but yet in this physical body we have unique. We're not only all unique in different ways. We both have a story to tell. We're quick
Mhm.
though. I just had a flashback while I was saying that of the dream that I had last night, which is weird. Just like I
Mhm.
don't know what it was about, but I just had.
Uh,
I don't know if
I've had those
Kava has
experiences
something. It's
before.
so weird. It hit me really hard. That's why I almost forgot what I was going to say.
Uh,
But yeah, man. Is there anything you would like to add, brother? Or
um,
I know
I would
we
just say, I know that so many people out there struggling and have
many different ways.
many different problems, and I have my own problems, believe me. And we're all gonna suffer, but it comes down to, you know, if you're out there and you see someone struggling, help them as much as you can. And we're all going to suffer, and we're all interconnected. And there is not one person better than another person, you know.
Doesn't matter what they have in their bank account.
It does not. What is in your bank account does not define what kind of person you are. And it's a shame that our culture has evolved in such a way that that's the way it's viewed. I mean, I know a lot of people that, you know, look at me. I'm not rich by any stretch of the imagination. But I have a roof over my head, and I have a car, an older one, granted, but it's a Honda. They can last a long time.
A decent stock on these sacred plants.
I do have a decent stock on the sacred plants, and I've had experiences that have just blown me away. And you know, if persevere, and realize that suffering, you know, is the flame in which transforms you into something better. Um, and don't get so caught up in this materialist way of thinking. This world, this universe that we inhabit, is so much more mysterious than you could ever imagine. You know, and people that say that there's no adventure to be had are so wrong. Maybe there's no unexplored territory in this world, but there is unexplored territory in here that that would just blow you away, and explore that, you know. I think that's about all I got to say.
Yes, for now anyway.
Did you have something to say?
I do not believe so, my good man.
Right.
I think you ended on a very amazing note. We will be back on a Kratom and Kava fueled conversation very soon.
Hare Krishna.
Until then, we ask you will handle situations with
Consciously.
peace. Consciously. And hey, Kava it up if you can. As much Kava as you can. I don't know why I get all weird at the end.
I know. All right. I guess this is the time. Bye.